fallen leaves tell a story, from the verdant plains of Limgrave to the twilit lakes of Liurnia, from the festering wastelands of Caelid, painted scarlet by the rot-blighted skies, to the frigid peaks of the fire giants. Every corner of the lands between shares a common landmark, a brilliant beacon of gleaming gold that creates a canopy over the realm. Once upon a time, all living things basked beneath the magnificence of the Erd Tree, but prosperity seldom stands the test of time, and even the greatest empires fall. The Erd Tree towers over all, from the heart of the lands between. It was once a primordial tree known only as the Crucible, but it has since been commandeered by the Greater Will, and now stands as the symbol of the Golden Order, and derives its power directly from the Elden Ring. Its grace was cast upon the lands in the form of splendid sunbeams that reassured the people that the blessing of the Greater Will was ever present. The Erd Tree is the embodiment of the Greater Will. The Greater Will is foremost among the outer gods, the forces of nature that transcend all other powers in the realm. The Greater Will is the primordial god of order, and this god is ever at odds with its counterpart, the Frenzied Flame, which is the god of chaos. In the early days of the Lands Between, before the coming of Queen Marika, the chaotic influence of the Frenzied Flame was rampant. Queen Marika was chosen by the Greater Will to bring order to the Lands Between, and thus she was to be the physical vessel for the Elden Ring. This made her a god, or an Empyrean, one who is eternal and capable of housing the Elden Ring within them. In future videos, I'll go into much more detail about Marika's conquest of the Lands Between, but for now, what you need to know is the following. Marika, with the Greater Will's endorsement, brought order to the Lands Between. With the help of her consort Godfrey and his armies, many great battles were won, and Marika's supremacy as the ruler of the Lands Between was solidified. Her rule and the preeminence of the Greater Will manifested in the form of the Erd Tree. But in time, chaos seeped back into the Lands Between, and Queen Marika turned against the Greater Will. The Great Elden Ring was shattered. The Greater Will bestowed the Elden Ring upon Queen Marika, and with it intact, there was order in the Lands Between. But peace and prosperity did not last long. Marika banished her husband Godfrey and all of his warriors from her domain, creating the Tarnished. She robbed them of the guidance of grace. This was done in the hopes that they would grow stronger from the challenges they faced, waging war in the lands beyond her reach, dying repeatedly, and then following the Graces back to her side. Soon later, Queen Marika took a new consort named Radagon, who is believed to be not only her lover, but also the same entity, making them two parts of the same god. This no doubt brought some chaos into the Lands Between, but more chaos was to come. There was one aspect of the Elden Ring that Marika considered undesirable, the rune of destined death. As a god of order, Marika had a half-brother, a chaotic shadow of herself, the Frenzied Flame to her Greater Will. This shadow sibling was named Malekith. Marika prized the rune of death from the Elden Ring and gave it to Malekith so that he may guard it for eternity. But as we will soon discuss, this rune would be stolen and used for ill, at severe cost to Marika and the peace of her realm. In her grief, Queen Marika raised her hammer and sundered the Elden Ring. At the very same moment, Marika's lover, the male part of her soul, Radagon, attempted to repair the ring, only he failed. In our home across the fog, the Lands Between. The Lands Between was governed by Queen Marika, the Erd Tree, and the philosophy of the Golden Order, but beneath her and her consort were the demigod rulers of the 6 regions, all of whom would play a significant role in the events following the shattering. Now Queen Marika the Eternal is nowhere to be found. The shattering of the Elden Ring removed any semblance of order from the Lands Between, and Queen Marika the Eternal was punished by the Greater Will for her deeds. Marika remained the vessel for the Elden Ring, so the Greater Will could not destroy her entirely. Instead, it imprisoned her within the Erd Tree, alongside her parallel lover, Radagon, the two bound together in a single body. And in the Night of the Black Knives, Godwyn the Golden was first to perish. Queen Marika was a member of the Numen race. Where exactly they hail from isn't certain, but what is certain is that a group of Numen assassins, female all, hatched a cunning scheme. Somehow these assassins outwitted the mighty Malekith and stole the power of destined death, the rune Marika had given to the Black Blade for safekeeping. With the power of the Rune of Death, the Numen assassins fell upon the royal capital of Leyndell. Their weapons were imbued with the power of destined death, and not even the demigods could withstand the black sorceries roiling from their blades. The first to fall to the treasonous assassins was Godwyn the Golden, Marika's beloved firstborn son and heir. The loss of a child is tragic beyond reconciliation, no matter the circumstances. But for Marika, this was especially harrowing. You see, Marika and her first consort Godfrey had 3 children. The first was Godwyn the Golden. Godwyn was gallant, he was strong, and he was as beautiful as his mother. In the wars for the lands between, before Queen Marika's reign, Godwyn the Golden defeated the dreaded dragon Fortisax. Prior to the reign of Queen Marika and the supremacy of the Golden Order, the dragons ruled the lands between. But that is a discussion for another time. Fortisax was a fearsome dragon lord, and Godwyn bested him, earning Godwyn the dragon's respect and friendship. So, understandably, when Godwyn the Golden was slain in the darkness, by treachery, Marika was heartbroken. To add to this, Marika's other children, the twins Morgott and Mohg, were born as omens, a fate worse than miscarriage in the eyes of many lords and nobles. Omens are children born with bestial features, like wings and tails, but most commonly horns. They are accursed beings, and are despised so vehemently that omen killing became a profession in the lands between. Long ago, when the lands were ruled by dragons and giants, omens were considered touched by the divine. But in the golden age of Marika, the Erd Tree, and the Greater Will, omens were seen as impure, and mothers would cut off the omen's horns at birth in their shame. This process often killed the omen child, but it was a risk worth taking. Those who survived were commonly recruited as soldiers due to their abnormal size and strength. With her second consort Radagon, Marika reared another pair of twins, but once again they were cursed. This time it was due to the fact that Marika and Radagon are 2 parts of the same whole, making these twins the spawn of one god. These twins were Miquella and Malenia. Miquella was cursed with eternal youth, while Malenia was afflicted with the notoriously noxious scarlet rot. So, of Marika's 5 children, 4 were blighted. Morgott and Mohg were both omens, while Miquella and Malenia were frail and festering. As you can imagine, this brought great shame upon the queen. Marika hid them in the depths below the capital, while Godwyn was paraded before the populace, for he was the golden seed of Marika and Godfrey. That was until his blood spilled across the palace floor, murdered by the Numen assassins and their deft touch. The catalyst for the Night of the Black Knives seems clear. Radagon's daughter Rani was born an Empyrean, just like Queen Marika, meaning she had the potential to be a repository for the Elden Ring, and could therefore replace her. The 2 fingers of the Greater Will recognized her as a potential successor to Queen Marika. It seems that Rani resented this fate, and did not wish to be a servant of the Greater Will's unyielding need for order. So she stole a fragment of the Rune of Death from Malekith, and imbued its power within the blades of her assassins. Then, the Night of the Black Knives could commence. The assassins slew Godwyn the Golden, while Rani simultaneously took her own life, transferring her spirit into a doll said to have been carved in the image of her former mentor, the Snow Witch. In order for this death magic to work, Rani needed to kill only her body, while maintaining her spirit. That is why Godwyn the Golden needed to die. His body could remain, but his soul needed to perish to sate death. And so, the husk of the once great prince dwells beneath dust and ash in the deep-root depths. It should be noted that, while Rani is clearly responsible for the Night of the Black Knives, there is another reason this event took place, and another inadvertent culprit. The Greater Will chose Marika to be the vessel for the Elden Ring, and it was made clear to her that in order for there to be order in the lands between, the ring should be kept whole. Marika may have literally shattered the Elden Ring in her grief after Godwyn's death, but one could argue that the shattering took place long before, when Marika removed the Rune of Death and gave it to Malekith. Perhaps the Night of the Black Knives was the Greater Will's omnipotent punishment for Marika's failure to keep the Elden Ring in one piece. Soon Marika's offspring, demigods all, claimed the shards of the Elden Ring. Thus it was proven that not even demigods were impervious to the touch of destined death. This epiphany, combined with Marika's maternal madness and the shattering of the Elden Ring, meant that the lands between would inevitably be plunged into total chaos, much to the merriment of the frenzied flame. The mad taint of their newfound strength triggered the shattering. Marika's imprisonment and the sundering of the Elden Ring left a power vacuum in the lands between, and not even the children were spared from the mad taint. As you can see from the first image, Mohg, the Lord of Blood, knew that his half-brother Miquella was an Empyrean, and kidnapped him in the hopes of becoming his consort and the eventual Elden Lord. In the second image, we see Praetor Rykard, Rani's brother. In the Night of the Black Knives, Rani gave some portion of the stolen Rune of Death to Rykard, giving him the power to challenge Marika's shadow Malekith. Rykard was less inclined to seek the role of Elden Lord though. Like his sister, Rykard loathed the overbearing power of the Greater Will, and opposed the forces of order. He unearthed ancient sorceries in the volcanic depths of Mount Gelmir, and combined his being with the Elder Serpent he found at the heart of the mountain. A war from which no lord arose. War ravaged the lands between. Some demigods, like Rani and Rykard, had no desire to replace Marika and Radagon, but others did, and the power of the great rune shards was too enticing to decline. There are 8 known great runes, each possessed by a separate demigod or Empyrean, and each of these demigods are either Marika's children or descendants of said children. There is of course the Rune of Death, possessed in part by Malekith, as well as Rani and Rykard. There is the Great Rune of the Unborn belonging to Queen Rennala. And then there are 6 others, owned by Godric the Grafted, Starscourge Radahn, Praetor Rykard, Morgoth the Omen King, Mohg the Bloodlord, and Malenia the Severed. Each of these demigods are born of Marika, Radagon, or both, with the exception of Godric. Godric's place in the family is less clear, but it seems he is a descendant of the Golden lineage. Unfortunately for Godric, there were many generations between Godwyn and Godric, meaning his divine blood was diluted. As such, his ability to claim one of the great runes was very ambitious, and he was humbled for his brazen impertinence. Godric was swiftly sent running from the heart of the conflict in the royal capital. He retreated all the way to Limgrave and took shelter from General Radahn's pursuit within the high walls of Stormvale Castle. From the battlements, Godric grew bold again and insulted his rival demigod Malenia. The 2 gods duelled at the gatefront ruins, and Malenia the Blade of Miquella defeated him with ease, humiliating the grafted upstart. Godric grovelled at her feet for mercy, and Malenia considered him too pathetic to kill. Perhaps a better name for this demigod would have been Godric the Grovelling. Malekith, ashamed of his failure to protect the Rune of Death, bound his blade within his own flesh as penance. He took no part in the wars. Rani, despite claiming a great rune, also remained outside of the conflict, but she nurtured her desire to rid the lands between of the Greater Will from the solitude of Carrion Manor. Rani's mother Rennala also took no part in the wars. She was heartbroken when Radagon left her for Marika, and without her heroic husband, the glintstone sorcerers of the Raya Lucaria Academy turned on her. She remained locked in her library, seeking a way to reincarnate her beloved daughter Rani, who she believed was gone from the world. We already know that Rykard was uninterested in pursuing the title of Elden Lord, and turned to magics within his mountain refuge, instead of those within the other great runes. His practices and preachings were undeniably horrific, however, as it is said the most appalling of all the battles in the Shattering took place on the foothills of his mountainous dominion. I also mentioned Mohg's treacherous scheme, kidnapping the helpless Miquella from his cocoon at the base of the Halig tree, in an attempt to become the Empyrean youth's consort. Unlike his twin, Morgoth retained his honour, despite being shunned by his kin for his hideous appearance. Morgott claimed a great rune and took a stand within the capital of Leyndell, where he devoted himself to defending the Erdtree and his captive mother. The fact that he was not displaced by his demigod siblings is a testament to his prowess. However, the Erdtree would not accept Morgott as the Elden Lord. Nevertheless, the honour-bound Omen King remained and guarded the Golden Tree with his life. So, with Godric's humiliation, that only leaves Malenia and Radahn. Their clash in the wilds of Caelid was cataclysmic. Of all the combatants in the War of the Shattering, General Radahn, Conqueror of the Stars, was the most prolific. From his stronghold at Redmane Castle, Radahn systematically wiped out his adversaries, or sent them fleeing. The only demigod capable of standing up against him was Malenia the Valkyrie. The half-siblings fought each other to a stalemate. Desperate for victory, Malenia unleashed her most deadly and disgraceful power, that of her Scarlet Rot. The rot bloomed from within her and devastated the region of Caelid, transmogrifying it into a decaying wasteland. Not even Radahn's glorious armour could protect him from the putrefying potency of the rot, and it consumed him from within, deteriorating his mind, leaving a cursed and corrupted beast who would wander the wasted battlefield for eternity, feasting on the decomposing flesh of friend and foe alike. The exertion required from Malenia took its toll on her as well. She fell into a coma, and would certainly have perished were it not for the unlikeliest of heroes. One of her clean rot knights, named Finlay, carried her from the battlefield, all the way to the base of the Halig Tree, where she could restore her strength alongside her brother. Unbeknownst to her, however, Miquella would be stolen by Mohg, and she would be powerless to stop it. A war leading to abandonment by the Greater Will. The war and its aftermath brought chaos to the lands between. The Elden Ring was severed. Marika and Radagon were sealed away within the bowl of the Erdtree. The demigods smouldered within their domains, and all the lands between them lay in ruin. The Greater Will was gone, and so too was its grace. Only small slivers of the guiding grace remained, just enough to lead an unlikely saviour to the base of the Erdtree. Arise now, ye tarnished, ye dead who yet live. The call of long-lost grace speaks to us all. Little is known of Queen Marika's relationships. We know that Godfrey was the father of Marika's first 3 children, and we know that he and his armies were pivotal in securing Marika's supremacy as the unequivocal ruler of the lands between. But what is less well known is why she chose to banish Godfrey from her domain, along with all of his warriors. Was her love for Radagon so strong that she could not bear to look upon her first husband? Or was it genuinely meant as a test, so that Godfrey and his followers could be hardened by overwhelming adversity? Maybe it was the Greater Will's influence that caused it. Prior to his exile, Marika had broken free the Rune of Death from the Elden Ring. Maybe the Greater Will knew that chaos would follow, and a great warrior would be needed to make the pilgrimage to the Erdtree, to restore order to the lands between. Whatever the case, Godfrey, who was the first Elden Lord, became the first Tarnished. All of his warriors and followers joined him in exile and in undeath. They formed the Round Table Hold and worked to realise the goal given to them by the Greater Will and by Queen Marika before the madness took her. To aid them in their insurmountable task, Marika commanded the blacksmith named Hugh to forge a god-slaying weapon, capable of delivering one Tarnished to the position of Elden Lord. Hoarah-Loux, chieftain of the Badlands. First of the Tarnished, Hoarah-Loux is the original name of Godfrey. When Queen Marika came to the barbaric and uncivilized lands between, she chose the greatest warrior as her consort. This was Hoarah-Loux. It seems that Hoarah decided to adopt a more dignified name, one befitting of his lofty rank, hence the name Godfrey and the beginning of the Golden lineage. The ever-brilliant Gold Mask. The Gold Mask is one of the most mysterious of the Tarnished. He was a scholar of great intellect, and it is said that he foresaw the coming guidance of grace, even when the lands between were at their darkest. He was a staunch follower of the Golden Order, a concept I've mentioned already, but let me elaborate. Alongside the Erdtree, the Greater Will used a religious philosophy to make his great will known. This movement preaches the blessings of the Greater Will and is composed of 2 major principles, one regarding regression and the other regarding causality. They are as follows. 1. Regression is the pull of meaning, that all things yearn eternally to converge. And 2. Causality is the pull between meanings. It is the connections that form the relationships of all things. We could speculate on the significance of these principles, and I plan to in a future video, but for now, what is important is that the Tarnished are converging on the Erd Tree, in a hopelessly ambitious gambit for the title of Elden Lord. Fia, the deathbed companion. Of all the Tarnished, Fia may seem the unlikeliest of warriors. In her homeland, somewhere beyond the lands between, Fia was a deathbed companion. She would collect the warmth and vigour from various worthy champions and deliver them to the corpse of an exalted noble, granting them a second chance at life. Her role in the lands between is a crucial one. You see, Godwyn the Golden Soul was killed, but his body remained in the realm of the living. Fia believed that, with her aid as a deathbed companion, Godwyn would return to the lands between and assume his mantle as the Prince of Death. The loathsome Dung Eater. The Tarnished come in all forms, warriors and widows, sages and sorcerers. But honour is not a trait shared by all Tarnished. The Dung Eater is the epitome of egregiousness. We'll explore his grisly and grotesque lore in the future, but an interesting thing to note about the Dung Eater is his armour, which gives some clues about his motives. His armour has been crudely altered with vile protrusions, resembling an omen with its horns cut off. He seems to willingly embrace the shameful visage of those poor omens who were victims of persecution under Queen Marika's reign. And Sir Gideon Ofnir, the All-knowing. Lastly, there is Sir Gideon Ofnir, the leader of the Round Table Hold. He deeply desires to become Elden Lord, and to achieve this end, he has devoted himself to learning not only a wide array of sorceries, but also the lore of the lands between, and all of its important figures. He is intelligent enough to know that powerful rulers align themselves with useful people, and Sir Gideon has done exactly that. Even going so far as to adopt the young warrior Nefeli Lu, who may just have very important blood. She shares a last name with Godfrey, though many Tarnished may be oblivious to this connection, as he put that name aside long ago. And one other, whom grace would again bless, a Tarnished of no renown, crossed the fog to the lands between, to stand before the Elden Ring and become the Elden Lord. And that brings us to you. Whether you hail from Hoaraloo's armies, or from some realm far away from the lands between, a Tarnished will follow the guiding graces to the Erd Tree to claim the title of Elden Lord and restore the Elden Ring. Order must reign supreme, and once again, that brilliant beacon of gleaming gold will shower the lands with grace. Such is the inexorable intention of the Greater Will. And there you have it. If you've just stumbled across this channel, thank you so much for sticking around, and thank you all for watching. My name's Drew Mora, and I'll see you in the next one.